By the time I grew up, there was $30 billion a year in cargo moving through Idlewild Airport, and believe me, we tried to steal every bit of it. So you gotta understand, we grew up near the airport. It belonged to Paulie. And we had friends and relatives who worked all over the place, and they would tip us off about what was coming in and what was moving out. If any of the truckers or airlines gave us any trouble, Paulie had his union people scare them with a strike. It was beautiful. It was an even bigger moneymaker than numbers, and Jimmy was in charge of it all. Whenever we needed money, we'd rob the airport. And to us, it was better than Citibank.
Welcome to Money Unplugged. I'm Chris Hill. Thanks for listening. Thanks for spreading the word. Thanks for reaching out on social media and email. info@moneyunplugged.com is the email address, by the way, if you feel like dropping a note. info@moneyunplugged.com. Today on the show, Linda Rottenberg. She is the co-founder and CEO of Endeavor, a global organization that has spent nearly 30 years mentoring startups around the world. Mercado Libre, just to name one. And Linda's another one of these people who kind of flies under the radar, despite the fact that Time magazine named her one of their 100 innovators for the 21st century. She hit the New York Times bestseller list with her book, Crazy is a Compliment, The Power of Zigging When Everyone Else Zags. She's been called the Entrepreneur Whisperer, and you'll hear why, because we talk a lot about what it takes to risk your professional life on an idea that other people think is crazy. We also get into how to manage your money when you're in a relationship with someone else. But we started out talking about her growing up in Massachusetts as the oldest of 3 kids. Her dad was a lawyer, her mom was a stay-at-home mom. And maybe this is foreshadowing a little bit, but her first job as a teenager was not the typical job of working in a local shop or babysitting or something like that. Linda's first job is crazy. I'm going to let her tell the story.
This is inscribed in my memory because it's, although it didn't have the effect I thought it would have, which is there were these 2 ornithology interested twins who were trying to create the new Trivial Pursuit. So they were taking their rare ornithology, I guess, bird trivia, but expanding it. They thought they needed a new Trivial Pursuit, which I don't know when Trivial Pursuit came out, but this must have been the summer of 1985. And they had a number of us working on all the clues. So I would go to their house like 4 days a week during the summer. This was a job, but we were going to be paid at the end, and worked my butt off researching these things. And I guess I came late to collect my money, because by the time I went to collect my money, my dad drove me to their house and they told me, oh, we have double or nothing. We think the sales are going to be incredible of this board game. So we're offering a double or nothing, opportunity, or you can get, they did the math on what I was going to.
This sounds like a really bad game show.
It was, and I took the scam. And I walked back into the car. My dad's a lawyer, right? Same job. He still has the same job now that he had. He was not happy that I did not walk back in with a check or cash. And I said, oh no, it's double or nothing. Of course, I never saw $1. And you'd think this would have made me risk averse. And no, I end up in entrepreneurship. I am less trustful when people offer too good to be true stories.
Now I'm just focused on the rare bird version of Trivial Pursuit.
I know, it was the rare.
There's so many board games. I'm sure someone has created something like that.
And you're shocked that this wasn't a home run.
Right.
That I didn't double my money.
Given what I know about you, given your range of interests and your intellectual firepower, I'm sure you would have done well in any number of majors. I am curious, though, what made you choose, I think I have this right, social studies was your degree at Harvard?
Yeah, I know. Social studies, it sounds like you're taking coloring books,
it sounds
right?
Like
with
middle
geography.
School.
Yeah. Social studies is a wonderful, sort of pretentious major, but wonderful. You learn Oh, you read all the dead white men, basically. You read de Tocqueville and Freud and Adam Smith, and you learn the history of economy, sociology, politics, history. It's all combined into one. But you do it with the theoretical underpinning of a lot of the ancient and early grounders in economy and political thought.
Are you taking this because this is of interest to you and maybe it leads to a job somewhere down the line? Because there are people who go to college, they take a major because they know this is what I want to do and this is going to lead me to that. Social studies, for you, it sounds like it was just like, I don't know which direction I'm going in, but I think whatever direction I go in, this is going to help me in some way.
Social studies, first of all, I don't think people were as focused on jobs back then as they are now.
I sure wasn't.
So I don't think that was a thing. Unless people were going to medical school, I don't think that was a thing. We were all competitive, and it was competitive to get into. So I think that was the big draw. Only 100 people a year got to be in this major. You knew you were going to be around smart people who were challenging themselves. But looking back, people wouldn't have done that now. But becoming an economist back then was not seen, it was sort of not looked down on, but it just wasn't seen the way it is today.
You went straight from Harvard to Yale Law School.
I did.
Did you think you were going to be a lawyer? Or I'm curious, this is something I talked to Dan Pink about because he talked about going to law school in no small part because the advice from his parents was, this will give you something to fall back on.
Yeah, well, this is
Did that factor into your thinking?
Well, my parents definitely thought you needed a terminal degree, and I was not going to medical school, and I didn't want to take the time off before you would go to business schools. Most of my friends ended up going to business school, and I spent a lot of time in HBS, and in fact, there are actually 7 case studies on Endeavor. So I spent a lot of time at HBS and Stanford GSB, but I didn't at the time think about going. It was sort of the Gordon Gekko, greed is good. That just didn't interest me. There wasn't really almost anything about entrepreneurship. So I graduated in 1990. That dates me. So you didn't think about becoming an entrepreneur, right? So today I probably would have gone out into the, quote, real world, and I would have gone to business school or just been an entrepreneur. But then I thought law school, LA Law was really cool. And
that was a cool show.
It was a cool show. And you went to Yale, I was told, because you didn't want to practice law. That's what I was told. Bob Rubin went to Yale Law School. Miriam Red Edelman went to Yale Law School. The people who wrote the Zagat, restaurant guys went to Yale Law School. I got the memo that no one else got because I got there and people wanted to, if not practice law, then become a judge, clerk for a Supreme Court, be senators. And in fact, 2 of my classmates are senators, Chris Coons and Michael Bennett, and then Cory Booker after me. So 3, several are, clerks for the Supreme Court. So I guess I got the wrong memo, clearly. But my parents then thought I would have a fallback in law, which I protested, though I did end up taking the bar exam, which we can come back to. Was
your dad's hope that you were going to join him?
And my brother, who did, which is the big shocker. I don't know that he thought I was going to join him, but I think he thought that a stable, nice life, back to, my parents came home for supper. We didn't, as I said, we didn't travel internationally, but I went to public school, right? So it's, again, back to I didn't think about money growing up. I went to public school, not private school. We didn't take fancy vacations, but I didn't want for anything. Right? So I felt very comfortable. And so my dad, I think, thought that I was going to want stability. I thought, no, I have stability. Now I can go do what I'm passionate about. The story is that I go to Latin America after graduating law school. My professors take pity on me because I'm the only person in my class that doesn't have not only one job planned, but most people had 2 jobs planned because they had a clerkship and then the law firm. I had nothing. And so my law professors told me that there was this opportunity in Chile. I'd been editor-in-chief of the Yale Law and Policy Review. There was this opportunity in Chile to go work on a policy journal and teach at the local university for a few months. There had been a grant, and would I want to go? I said, sure. And then I went to Chile, and then it turned out one of my professors from Argentina, who had rewritten the Argentine constitution after the military junta was being brought by the president of Bolivia to rewrite their constitution, has a heart attack in the La Paz airport and dies.
This sounds like it needs to be a miniseries.
I know. My life is a miniseries. So my professors call me up and reroute me to Buenos Aires. They say, you don't have anything to do anyways, Linda, so you're going to go. And this man's dream, Carlos Nino, who died, had a dream of the first interdisciplinary law and business school where people would spend full time teaching so they weren't with clients and compromised, basically. He wanted to model it after Yale Law School. And so I worked for a year. And as I'm working in it, it's now 1995, 96, I'm realizing no one is becoming entrepreneurs. And this is now Yahoo and Netscape and Steve Jobs going back to Apple. And I can't understand why no one is in Latin America is starting on becoming entrepreneurs. And one day I'm in Argentina, Buenos Aires, in a taxi, and my driver tells me he has an engineering degree. So I'm like, oh my God, where are you? And I couldn't think of the word. Turns out there was no word for entrepreneur.
Literally no word.
Literally no word.
No translation.
No, impresario meant big businessman, Swiss bank accounts, government connections. And so I thought, oh my God. No, my parents already don't understand what I'm doing here in Latin America for like a year. Imagine not being able to tell them there's a word for what you want to do. So that was the origin of Endeavor. By the way, 4 years later, we're in Argentina, Chile, and then Brazil. And the editor of the Brazilian dictionary, Aurelio, calls us up and says they're adding the words emprendedor and emprendedorismo into the lexicon. Yes.
Nice.
So now there's words in Spanish and Portuguese. And I have a co-founder, and we get a few people to believe in this, but I have to go back and tell my parents. So this is going back to my parents. And I had taken the bar exam. That was the only thing I agreed to do. But when you checked off, are you practicing, now or later, I wrote in a little box, never. That didn't go over very well with my mom. And so my dad was continuing to pay bar dues. This was the deal.
Oh.
And so when I told them, my dad sat me down and said, Linda, you don't have a trust fund. Like, you don't have a fallback plan here. What are you going to do? And I said, I know I have to figure this out. I understand that. And he said, well, I'm paying the bar dues until this thing becomes real. And it took 10 years. Endeavor's now in 10 countries. We have entrepreneurs from all over who have, some of whom had exited. And finally, my dad called me up 10 years later and said, I think I'm going to stop paying the bar dues. So that's when I know I made it.
Let me go back to that moment with your dad where he's sitting you down and he's laying out your economic reality.
Yeah.
How did that hit you on a gut level? Because that sounds, for as passionate and excited as you are about the opportunity that Endeavor can bring, what does that feel like on a gut level, that economic anxiety?
Yeah, I call it my kitchen table moment, where, do you want to take the safe and knowable path or venture into the scary unknown, but that's calling you? And I just said, I have to do this. I will look back at my life and regret it for the rest of my life if I decide, I was not going to go to law, but my parents said, okay, you'll call Goldman Sachs or Bain. And I said, no, I've got to try. I've got to try to do this other thing. And I think when I, emotionally, I think it helped me connect with so many entrepreneurs who had to tell their friends and their family about their crazy idea, which was not a sure bet. And, now Endeavor works, now in 45 countries, and we're helping entrepreneurs access, so much venture capital and private equity. Back then, there was none. There was no venture capital in any of these markets we were in. So it really was a big deal for these young people to tell their parents they were going to start out. So I guess as scared as I was, I sort of knew not only did I have to do it, but I told myself then I was going to channel my own fear and help others with the same ones who didn't even have, the word to tell their parents. So that's really what I told myself in that moment.
Coming up, we've got the speed round and a really great penny for your thoughts. But Linda talking about her kitchen table moment has got me thinking about what's in my kitchen and what you should have in your kitchen, and that's Marmar. It is my favorite chili garlic crunch, and I've tried a bunch of them. Marmar is the one for me. It has amazing flavors. It's not too spicy. It is so versatile. Breakfast sandwiches, lunch sandwiches, pasta sauce, burrito bowls. I use Marmar more than just about any other spice in my home. And there are two styles of Marmar. If you're someone who doesn't want too much heat, you just want the amazing flavors, the original Marmar is the one for you. But if you're like, hey Chris, I actually do want some heat to go with the amazing flavors, then get the spicy Marmar and you can thank me later. Go to ilovemarmar.com, get 10% off your first purchase when you use the promo code MONEY. Click the link in the show notes or go to ilovemarmar.com, get 10% off by using the promo code MONEY. Make your taste buds happy. All right, let's get back to Linda. Let me pull back from Endeavor into your home, something I've asked other people who have been sitting across from me.
Yeah.
You're married.
Yes.
To what extent, before you got married, did you and your husband talk about money?
My husband's an author, and both of us decided to pursue something that we loved, and in return had what he would call his tuna fish years, right? I would call the peanut butter years. I don't like tuna fish, but we decided neither of us had families that were going to just say, oh, well, we'll just be able to pay for your apartment. So we had to figure things out, but that was one of the things that bonded us, is that we came from families that had been more middle-class orientation, and yet, for some reason, both of us didn't crave that security. We craved doing something. We thought that if we pursued what we were passionate about, the money would follow. And so that was actually one of the things that bonded us together. And the other thing is that money is best used on experiences. So both of us love to travel, and even to this day, a lot of our gifts to our daughters are about travel or about going to Broadway theater, which they love. And so this idea of using money to be experiential. So we spoke about it in those terms. I think we had seen money, clearly a real absence of money and poverty is very stressful. And we didn't want to have a life of that close to the poverty, like stress. On the other hand, we also saw people who had all the money they could ever need, and it didn't make them happier. So I think that what we talked about is more of values conversation. And we always say money is values, right? People who talk about money in the absence of values, they're making value choices, right? And so that's I think what we talked about: education, experiences, and being able to live lives of passion while also wanting children, and so wanting to be able to, afford to live and now, play Brooklyn.
I don't know how many direct lessons about money I gave my kids. I know we had conversations about money, but I know I didn't really sit them down and walk through, numbers or budgeting or anything like that.
So the one thing I will say that I talked to them about is this idea of yours, mine, and ours bank accounts. I felt very strongly about this. I don't know why I felt so strongly about it, because I didn't enter the marriage making a lot of money, and then I've earned more, over time. But from the beginning, I said, I'm not going to have every purchase looked over if this is my money. But of course, the family, we have to figure out what paid bills together. But yours, mine, ours was very important to me, and I have imparted that to my girls. No matter who they're involved with, what relationship they're in, I've said this is very important to be independent.
Oh, I think that is great advice for anyone. Anyone who's in a relationship.
Anyone who's in a relationship.
Yeah. Have money that goes towards the common cause that is your relationship. Have money that is yours.
Yeah.
That you don't have to think about, that you don't have to spend time worrying about. Because that, to me, I forget who said it, but I remember reading somewhere someone saying the greatest thing for me about money, about having money, is that it takes away the anxiety of not having money. So it's not even, I can do whatever I want. It's just the floor has been raised in terms of my emotional well-being. That anxiety is gone. So I can focus my energy elsewhere. And I think what you just talked about ties into that slightly. Just the less time people have to spend thinking about money, worrying about money, they can put their energy to something else.
I do not want to be in a position where every month we're going line by line. I don't know why the idea of that wasn't as if I was hiding anything per se. It was that the idea of that, or why did you spend on those? Why did you buy those shoes? Did not want that. And that's really helped our marriage.
It may have something to do with the fact that it is in our lifetime, you and me, it is in our lifetime that women were finally allowed to get their own credit card by themselves without having it signed by a man. Or, it was when we were in college at the same time in the city of Boston that women could start their own business without getting sign off from a man. One
of the things I told you that my first trip was at 15, right? When I was a sophomore in college or a freshman in college, I went on a spring break trip to Italy with my roommate and my mom. My mom decided she had never been to Italy, so she was going to sign off on this trip that they did help pay for because I was in college and had not gotten the money from the ornithology Trivial Pursuit, as we discussed. She was going to join us. And I remember very distinctly being in Rome, and my mom was flustered about adding a tip. She had never signed a credit card in a restaurant in her life. And I just thought, that is not going to be me. I love my mom, but no way. And I just remember that was also things that are seared into your memory. I just remember that. I was like, how could you have never? She's like, what? Your dad always does this. I never signed a credit card in a restaurant before. I don't know what tip to add. I thought, this is fascinating. Yeah.
Let's go to the speed round.
Okay.
What is one thing about money that you wish you knew earlier in life?
The theory of compound interest. I would have said, I spent money on my 20s when I wasn't even making very much. I was making so little and I didn't save enough. I would have saved so much more had I learned about compound interest. Man. I tell my girls about this now.
What is something you've bought with your own money, as we've discussed? What is something?
Yes.
What is something you've bought that makes you happy?
Recently, I bought the Lifetime Pro Rumblex. It's one of these like vibrating plates and some weights because I decided I'd been doing like Pilates or yoga and I needed to do more weightlifting. And then this is a vibrating plate. This is my birthday present to myself. It's amazing. So every morning I go up and I do some standing squats on it and it vibrates and it's amazing. It's calming and you get a workout. It's awesome.
I love the idea of a birthday present for yourself.
Oh, yeah.
At a certain age, everyone should do that.
Yeah. No one else is getting me birthday presents these days. My girls are like calling me up for 5 minutes. Hi, Mom. Happy birthday. I was like, yeah, thank you. So I get myself birthday presents, yes.
Have you ever made a purchase in your life that you regret and you still think about it?
Well, back to those early days when I didn't have much money, I spent so much money on CDs.
Yes.
Oh, my God. What a freaking waste. And I had a lot of them.
Yeah. You're not the only one.
And they were like, what, $10, $15 a pop?
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
And then they changed the technology and now what do we do?
I still love my Prince ones, but all the others, I was like, wow, this was really unnecessary.
What I'm assuming the answer to this is not going to be a CD. What is the last thing you splurged on just for yourself?
Oh, well, no, that's okay. So let me change then the answer of what makes me happy because the splurge on myself is that Lifetime Pro Rumblex and the weights. What makes me happy? If you go into our apartment, it reflects our travels. So we bought these from a dirt road, beautiful Balinese sculptures, and then Moroccan rugs, and now we've bought our first pieces of actual art in Lagos, Nigeria, where I was, and Ho Chi Minh City, Vietnam. And I walk around my house and it reminds me of my travel back to experiences. So not only do I love these sculptures and art, and it's not like they were that expensive, but we would never have paid, this 10 years ago. So it's a reflection of finally being able to do something that's a little bit not necessary, but beautification. But yet it reflects our travels. Everything is something we handpicked, and you have the memories. So that's what the other thing I would tell my girls: buy things that are either experiential or memories of something that was experiential.
Plus, you get the story.
Yeah.
When people ask, like, where'd you get that art? Let me tell you the story. What is a charitable cause that you like to support?
I'm going to go counterculture these days and say when Yale called me up and sort of said, well, can you help? We want to do things, to support folks to do things internationally. I think that there is a role for higher education. That's what has made America great. That has made America great is our colleges. So I wouldn't have said that, except now it's so contrarian these days that I will.
Do you have a favorite movie, TV series, fictional character that has money involved as a through line?
Well, it's funny. I was so depressed after the end of Succession. I was like, what am I going to do? And I just coming back from Dubai, binge watched The Gilded Age, which is by the guy who created Downton Abbey, but it's about the Gilded Age here. And all the top Broadway stars are in it. Audra McDonald. I mean, it's incredible. So, yeah, that's been really fun.
I mean, just the name alone, The Gilded Age, that screams money. We will wrap up with a penny for your thoughts. This is just some piece of life wisdom that you've picked up along the way that you can share with people who are listening. It can be about money, but it doesn't have to be. It's just something you've learned that you want to share.
I think the word passion is overused, but I do believe that money follows. I think people who do things just for money come to regret it, and it's hollow as an end. Whereas I think every entrepreneur I talk to that's a real entrepreneur doesn't think about the money. They think about the idea. They can't not do their idea. My husband, anybody who writes a book, can't not write the book. And I do believe that money follows often. However, I think you have to also piece things out. I gave myself 1 year at a time. Same with my husband, whether he should write another book. And for me, whether I was going to have to get a, quote, real job to satisfy my parents or going to keep going with endeavor. So I would say give yourself milestones, try something. Take the risk, take the chance, but give yourself deadlines and let the market and the world tell you, is this realistic or not? So I think you do have to, if you don't have the money, which I didn't, to fall back on, have a plan B. But if you don't try for the plan A, you will live to regret it.
How good is that advice, right? If you know an entrepreneur, if you know an aspiring business leader, send them a copy of Linda's book, Crazy is a Compliment, The Power of Zigging When Everyone Else Zags. I'm Chris Hill. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.